One of the most important things once a diagnosis has been made is actually one of the most difficult things to discuss. And that is about your end of life planning. It's about advanced treatments, advanced directives, wills. And this can be a lot to take in a very short space of time, especially if you've just been given a diagnosis that you don't know what it means, you don't know what the outcome means. And these are very difficult things for patients to deal with. Hello and welcome to A Doctor's View, a podcast looking at everyday health topics and life through a doctor's eyes. Please note that all opinions are my own and should not replace the advice given to you by your own doctor. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to Doctor's View. I'm Dr. Bolivios. This week I'm going to be talking about dementia, and the reason why I've chosen to discuss this topic is because on the back of being privileged enough of being invited to the Financial Times Health Live Dementia Summit the other week, I've decided to dedicate this episode to dementia and hopefully answer some questions that patients with newly diagnosed dementia may have, or indeed anyone who's got a friend or relative affected by a disease and wishes to learn more. Hopefully, by listening to this, you can understand a little bit more about the disease and what happens after you've been diagnosed, and also some of the steps involved in the steps that some of the healthcare organisations are taking to try and help quality of life for dementia patients, and also things that I've learned during the summit as well, which I found quite fascinating and interesting. So I thought I'd start off with some statistics. 850,000 people are estimated to be living in the UK with dementia, and 24.6 million people, that's about 38% of the population, know a family member or close friend who's living with dementia. And in our lifetime, 1 in 3 people born in the UK this year will develop dementia. That's quite high numbers, and these numbers are actually getting worse each year as people are living longer due to healthcare advances, due to lifestyle changes over time. And so these figures are getting worse. Dementia is a devastating disease, and I will talk a little bit more about it in more depth, but it doesn't prejudice in terms of whether you're rich or poor or different backgrounds. It really doesn't. And unfortunately, however, it does affect women more than men. 65% of people living with dementia are women. And in 2017, 16% of women died due to Alzheimer's disease and other dementias in the UK. And it was actually the leading cause of death for women in that year. So what is dementia? Well, dementia is actually a syndrome. It's not a disease in its own right. It's a collective term used for diseases that affect the brain, which cause a specific group of symptoms. And the main symptoms that we note are memory loss, things like thinking speed, mental sharpness, language understanding, change in mood, and difficulty in carrying out everyday tasks. Alzheimer's disease and dementia are two terms that are often mistaken one for the other. They're actually two different things. Alzheimer's disease is a specific cause of dementia. It is actually the most common cause of dementia. But as we said, dementia itself is a collective term for different diseases that can cause those symptoms. So Alzheimer's disease is actually a physical disease that affects the brain, and abnormal structures called plaques and tangles, these build up inside the brain and they disrupt how our nerve cells work and communicate with each other, and they eventually cause them to die. And this is what brings about the symptoms. Alzheimer's disease usually begins gradually with mild memory loss, and the patient may have difficulty recalling events or learning new information. And as Alzheimer's disease progresses, these problems become more severe, and eventually the person needs more day-to-day support from carers. And whilst there's no cure for Alzheimer's, there are some treatments that can temporarily ease some symptoms or at least slow down some of the progression. And the type of dementia that you want to learn about is important, because Alzheimer's disease can be slowed down with specific treatment, but there are other causes of dementia where unfortunately there is no immediate treatment that can stop it from progressing as quickly. So it is important to know the cause of the dementia that is being questioned. So, how is dementia diagnosed? Firstly, it's important to understand that as soon as you're worried about memory or think that someone you may know has dementia or you may have dementia, it's important to go seek help straight away, because the sooner you do that, the better likelihood of a better quality of life you may have, or the relative or loved one may have. And it's important to go see your GP as soon as possible when you're worried. So memory problems, firstly, don't necessarily mean that you have dementia, and they can be caused by other things like depression, anxiety, thyroid problems, side effects from medication, and there are some other medical conditions that can cause acute states of delirium or memory impairment. So it's important that these get ruled out first, and that's where your GP can help organise blood tests and also some basic questionnaires, and just to establish where you are at baseline, just to see if there's anything that is causing these things. You may also get asked about other things like your personal care, cooking, shopping, paying bills, how your driving is, all these things that can help with the diagnosis. It's important to know that dementia can be actually very difficult to diagnose, especially if symptoms are quite mild and in the early stages. So if there's uncertainty, what will happen is you'll be referred to a specialist, like either a psychiatrist, an elderly care physician, or in many cases a neurologist, who are experts in treating conditions that affect the brain and the nervous system. And they can be very specific, and with their experience, they are able to establish whether or not, yes, indeed, this is early stage dementia or not. Now, one of the most important things once a diagnosis has been made is actually one of the most difficult things to discuss. And that is about your end of life planning. It's about advanced treatments, advanced directives, wills. And this can be a lot to take in a very short space of time, especially if you've just been given a diagnosis that you don't know what it means, you don't know what the outcome means. And these are very difficult things for patients to deal with. It's important to stress, as unpleasant as it is to discuss these things, this is probably what's going to make the biggest difference to quality of life, the practical issues. And it sounds harsh, but in reality, when I see patients, it's very important, and it can be, like I say, difficult and distressing to think about these end of life things when you may be living well with dementia and you've got very good support, family and friends. But if there is a decline and things happen and your family don't know what your wishes would be, it can become very distressing for them too. So the planning ahead, which is sometimes called advanced care planning, this is important, as it can help decide how you'd like to be cared for in the final months of your life, where you'd like to be cared for, and who you'd like to be with you. And the important thing is to make these plans whilst you're still able to make these decisions. And they can help the people around you to know your wishes, and they can help doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals also know these wishes as well. And that can relieve a lot of stresses, both for the patient, the family, and the healthcare staff as well, who always act in their best interest for a patient. But when there's uncertainty, it can be slightly distressing if you're thinking, maybe they wouldn't want this, but at present it is what's best for them, so we'll do it. So the practical issues of things, there's things to consider, things like advanced statements and advanced decisions, and these are legal documents, and that express your wishes, and a lawyer can help set these up, a solicitor can help set these up with you. A will as well is also a very useful thing, and also setting up a lasting power of attorney, someone that can help make these decisions on your behalf, someone that you trust, and you trust will follow your instruction as well. There's also other things like religious or spiritual beliefs that you wish to be reflected in your care. As I said before, where you'd like to be cared for, be it in a nursing home, care home, or at home. Things can be put in place to try and make that as realistic as possible for you. Also, how you like to do things. Say if you prefer to have a bath in the evening or in the morning, or what type of music you listen to, TV shows. All these things can actually help with quality of life when the time comes and you're unable to make these decisions for yourself. Another important aspect of treatment later on in life is whether or not you decide to refuse life sustaining treatments in the future. And that's where an advanced decision needs to be made in terms of it needs to be written down, signed by yourself, signed by a witness, and to make sure that your doctor has a copy of the advanced decision as well. And it's included in your medical notes. And this can be ranging from things like CPR. Or being ventilated on intensive care, if you want antibiotics to be issued. And these are very important because, like I say, a healthcare professional will always act in your best interest, unless, of course, there are these legal documents in place that go contrary to that because they are your wishes and it's a legal platform to do it with. Now, a lot of these things that I've mentioned and spoken about, these can all be found online. I will include some links to sources, and there are some fantastic websites that talk about dementia and everything you could possibly need to know about it with regards to the medical side of things. And things like the NHS website are fantastic sources for that. And like I say, I'll put links down in the description. What I do want to talk about is the other side of dementia in terms of the carers, people who help look after people with dementia. And a carer isn't necessarily someone that is being paid to do something. It can be anyone, and this is the impact they can have on a carer's life is quite profound. And this is where I want to stress it's important to have these advanced directives, advanced decision making it done at a time where before it's too late. Now, some of the things that carers do can be very simple, but they can be more complex tasks. It can be things like accompanying someone with dementia to appointments and activities, helping them move about, eat and drink, helping them keep safe. Unfortunately, dementia patients are very vulnerable, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. Things like daily household tasks and organising finances. These are things that we may take for granted, but these are very important things throughout our life, regardless of any disease processes that we may have. And it also ranges to things like personal care, washing, dressing, and support for incontinence issues, and as well as providing just emotional support, distress, and answering difficult questions. These are things that a patient suffering with dementia often has. They can be distressed very easily because they find themselves in unfamiliar environments, and especially if they get a phone call that's out of their natural routine, their daily routine. It can be during the middle of the night. And these can be very, very distressing for the patients. And this is where a carer can help. I want to talk about what I learnt at the Financial Times Health Live, the Dementia Summit that I was invited to. I thought it was a fantastic event and it gave me a real insight into a few things. I wanted to share them with you. So, firstly, I want to say that what I learned was the superhuman effort that is going into dementia, not only in terms of the research into the disease, but also the steps that are being taken to just improve quality of life for those who have been diagnosed with dementia and for those who care for relatives and loved ones with dementia. And whilst there's no cure for dementia at present, I learned that the trajectory that we're on for helping to treat dementia is a similar one to that of cancer. Not that long ago, a diagnosis of cancer meant a very, very poor prognosis. And whilst there's still no cure for cancer, we've made huge leaps and strides in cancer survival rates with new treatments and breakthroughs over a relatively short period of time, thanks to funding and science and research. And sadly, one thing that I did learn was that thanks to some very poor political decisions years ago, unlike cancer, where a patient help is readily available in the NHS, the same cannot be said of dementia. And thankfully, we've made some progress in many areas. And I have to applaud companies and businesses who have taken the initiative to help in many ways. And what I learned was just the extent that this goes to. It extends from small things to more and more companies recognizing the impact that dementia has on the things that we take for granted in everyday life. For example, there are energy companies now who have created dementia friendly websites, and they're training their staff to recognize when a customer has dementia on the end of a phone and take the necessary steps to ensure that they're safe and they're prioritized over other customers in terms of seeking assistance. And some energy companies are also installing what's called a gas lock, and they install these into the homes of those who have dementia so that the carers can turn the lock on when they're not there, so that the customer can't accidentally turn on the gas when they're alone and they forget about it. And it's things like this that might sound small but are incredibly important, and they give so much peace of mind, not just for the energy companies themselves, but also for the carers. And the carers have said that this has been the biggest change that they could have imagined. The anxiety that they have leaving someone with dementia alone with a gas supply there, and it can be a potentially life-saving course of action for the customer. And I also learned about things like there's new initiatives, things like dementia villages, which is an environment where people with dementia are able to do normal everyday things like go to the post office, go to cinema, these normal things that we do in everyday life in a very controlled environment. And so in the background, there's people caring for them. They've got 24-hour surveillance. There's people there on site, and they've created these like little villages to allow people with dementia to interact with each other and to just try and live a normal life in a controlled environment. And I think that's wonderful. And I also learnt about Dementia Friends. Dementia Friends is a fantastic organisation, and many people suffering with dementia feel that society doesn't fully understand about dementia and how it affects their life. And a dementia friend is someone that learns about dementia so that they can help their community. And they do so by raising awareness and understanding so that people living with dementia can continue to live in the way that they want. But the biggest thing I learned was just how doing even the smallest things can make such a big difference. And like I say, this is where Dementia Friends really, really have a good handle on this. And they help people live with dementia in so many ways. So the things that make a very big difference, even though they're small things, can be ranging from just being more patient in a shop queue to visiting someone that you know with dementia. And these things actually really do help, and the feedback has been phenomenal for it. Dementia Friends can also get involved with things like volunteering, campaigning, just wearing a badge in public to help raise awareness. And anyone can be a dementia friend. Anyone who wants to help people with dementia in their community, anyone can take part. And I'll leave a link to their website in the podcast description if you want more information on how to join this fantastic organisation. And I also learned that there are many new NHS plans on the way, which aims to restructure some of the ways we manage patients with dementia to help include a greater patient autonomy. So I think that's incredibly important. We talk about autonomy a lot in medicine, and that is allowing a patient to help be part of their decision making and not just to make the decision for them. And that's where, as I said earlier, that the advanced planning comes into it. And I think there's going to be more focus on making sure that that's a critical part of the dementia pathway. And even today, I saw in the news that play music in clinics can have a soothing effect on dementia patients. So it's even these little things are making big differences, which is wonderful. I know this has been a bit of a doom and gloom one in terms of haven't given very, very good statistics, and also haven't highlighted anything really that positive. But I do want to say that whilst dementia is a devastating disease to be diagnosed with and to discover that a loved one is suffering from, the quality of life for both the patients and carers is not what it once was. And the main message I have to end this podcast is that if you're someone who's directly or indirectly involved with dementia, you're not alone. There's a vast majority of help out there, ranging from the Dementia Friends to the Alzheimer's Society to forums to community meetups. So there's no need to suffer alone. And I think this is something that has been fed back to the relevant bodies, in that patients often feel that they are suddenly alone with this diagnosis. It's not true. You are not alone. There is so much help out there, and there's so many willing people to help with every part of the diagnosis. And so please do seek it. And like I say, if you are worried about dementia in terms of the being diagnosed with it, you feel you've got early stages of it, it is important to seek help from your GP or healthcare practitioner as soon as possible. And with that, I'll leave you. Please do feel free to contact me at adoctorsview@gmail.com. I do have a website, adoctorsview.co.uk, and please send me any questions you may have regarding any topics you'd like me to discuss, and I'll do my very best to do so. Please do leave me a review on iTunes. I really do appreciate it. It does help me out a lot. And as always, please look after yourselves, and I'll join you again next time. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Goodbye.